Gershon Baskin is the founder of the Israeli-Palestinian Public Policy Institute and a former negotiator on the Palestinian-Israeli peace process. He joins us live from occupied East Jerusalem now. Good to have you on with us. Why hasn't the U.S. president been able to rein in Netanyahu with this latest round of violence?
I think that the position of the United States, the European Union, and several of Israel's allies is that Israel has a right to defend itself in the face of rockets that are falling down on Israel's civilian population from Gaza. That's the bottom line here from the Israeli point of view, from the American point of view. There are more than 3,000 rockets have been launched to the civilian population in Israel from Gaza. And those supporters of Israel believe that Israel has the right to defend itself.
So what do Israelis need before they begin taking a ceasefire seriously?
Well, I think the Israeli response is that quiet is met with quiet. Once Hamas ceases its activities of shooting rockets at Israel, Israel will stop shooting rockets. But we have a game here that's going on for many years, and every one of these rounds of violence, it's always one side or the other who demands the other to take the first step. Neither side will admit defeat here. Both sides will claim victory, and neither side will state outwardly that they are accepting a ceasefire, although we will have a ceasefire probably in the coming days.
So even if a ceasefire is reached, the underlying issues aren't likely to be addressed. Is the ceasefire then just a Band-Aid for what is essentially a gaping wound here?
Yes, it's a Band-Aid, and it's been going on for many, many years. The bottom line here of what this is all about is the Israeli occupation of the territories that the Palestinians claim for their own, the attempts of the international community to help the Israelis and the Palestinians reach a two-state solution, which I'm not sure is viable anymore, the continuation of the international community to mouth the mantra of two-state solution while the majority of those countries don't even recognize the state of Palestine, and a festering problem here of squalor in Gaza, of living under siege, of an unbearable human situation that no one would accept to live in, and the unfortunate realization that neither Israel nor Hamas are willing to actually talk to each other. And until they talk, until there is some direct contact, until they address those political problems and humanitarian problems, there is no real way out here. So it is a Band-Aid that we put on the wound for until the next round, until the Band-Aid falls off and the scab is pricked open and we have the next flare-up of violence.
This round of violence started in Jerusalem, specifically around Sheikh Jarrah and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I know that previous Israeli governments have been more cautious. So why is this government more brazen in its approach to these issues?
Look, the Sheikh Jarrah issue has been going on for 10 years. It's not a new issue. It was coming to a high court debate in the final days of Ramadan this year. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is also the Temple Mount, as the Jews refer to it as their most holy place, is a point of conflict almost all the time. During holiday times, it becomes more and more difficult, and this year's Ramadan coincided with the so-called Jerusalem Day, when Israelis celebrate what they call the liberation of Jerusalem or the unification of Jerusalem. And there was violence in Jerusalem. It wasn't really horrible violence. We've seen things like that quite often. But we also have other events that are taking place in the background of this, including the Abraham Accords and 4 Arab countries recognizing Israel and making peace with Israel, the frustration of the Palestinian side without having any political process, the canceling of the Palestinian elections by President Abbas. People say for fear that Hamas was going to win those elections. I'm not sure that that's true, but it's a number of events that came together that caused the flare-up. Hamas wanted to take credit and claim for Jerusalem, and it shot rockets into Jerusalem, and that for Israel was crossing a red line, and it responded with a heavy bombardment of Gaza. And that's the nature of events here, that one leads to the other. It's foolish to talk about who started, because this has been going on for 100 years. What's more important is to look forward and to try and figure out how we get out of it.
Right, and Netanyahu remains one of Israel's most popular politicians, and Israeli society has politically swung to the right, and many people do support this war. What's needed in Israel to move public opinion to a place where the population can support a sustainable peace?
Right. Well, Netanyahu is a popular politician. We've had 4 elections in the last 2 years where Netanyahu has not been able to put together a coalition government. So he has essentially not won those elections. The majority of Israelis have voted for political parties which don't support Netanyahu. Nonetheless, he remains prime minister. We have an aging Palestinian president who's been in office for 15 years on a 4-year term, and we have an authoritarian Islamic radical government in Gaza. None of these parties have leadership that are looking forward to the day where we can sit down and have a negotiated agreement. What we need is a change of leadership. We need leaders. We need people who think like statesmen, who are willing to think about tomorrow and understand that neither Israel nor Palestine is going anywhere. The 10 million or 11 million people who live between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, roughly 50% Jews and 50% Palestinian Arabs, are not leaving here. No one's raising the white flag and declaring surrender. We can only deal with each other if we sit down and talk to each other and figure out how we're going to share this land that each side claims as their own exclusively. This is the problem, that we have a conflict in which each side claims the rights to the land with its historical and justified claims, but there's no way out of here unless we figure out how to share it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and your insight into this. Gershon Baskin joining us from occupied East Jerusalem.